Hey everyone, it is Brian Rundle from Black and White with Brian Rundle and Lana Quest. No Lana tonight. She will be rejoining me next week, I think. It's been a little bit of a wonky week for me, and a large part of that has to do with the New York Metropolitans. And my whole schedule is going to be based around the New York Mets and their playoff games from this point on. So I don't know exactly what the schedule is going to be like. It's going to be a little bit all over the place, but as of right now, it's going to be based on the Mets. And the Mets played on Tuesday night. They didn't get over until over past 8 o'clock, and then we had the debate on that night. Then they played a 3-game series on Tuesday. What was it? Wednesday and last night, which was one of the greatest Mets baseball games, especially playoff games that I've ever seen. So I was extremely excited. I mean, I know most people, when they tune into the show, are not here to talk about sports, but I am a lifelong diehard New York Mets fan. And what I have watched over the last 3 days from them have just been some of the greatest baseball I've ever seen in my life. I'm very excited. That excitement continues on Saturday, where they face the Phillies in game 1 of the National League Divisional Series. But again, I know most people, when they tune in here, are not here for me to talk about the Mets. They're here for the political news and what's going on in our world. We have just a little over 4 short weeks until the most important election of our lifetime. Well, Brian, don't we say that every single election? Well, we have. And every single election that Donald Trump is running in is going to be the most important election of our lifetime. I mean, I think at this point, we all know who he is. We know what he represents. We know what he wants to do. At least the people who do not immerse themselves in right-wing propaganda media. If you just sit there and watch right-wing propaganda media all day, you're never going to know Donald Trump is as horrible of a human being as we know. Now, this does not come from CNN and MSNBC like they like to throw at anybody that is not a Donald Trump sycophant. This is just from basic logic and looking with your own eyes and hearing with your own ears just how horrific this human being is. And not just horrific, how incredibly stupid and unintelligible he is, how he's not fit to run this country. And if you have delved at all into any of his criminal behavior, you would see that this is not something that was sparked from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and from everybody on the left just to get Donald Trump. You would find that this comes from the fact that Donald Trump is just flat out a criminal, period. And he wants to try to turn this whole thing, and he's done a pretty decent job with turning it on other people and getting other people to think that what he's saying is true, that this is a Kamala Harris, Joe Biden witch hunt against him, or a Democrat witch hunt against him, whatever it is that you want to call it. We've heard this line over and over and over again. It's old, tired, and boring. But just this week, we saw that Jack Smith released, or there actually was documents released from the case for the January 6th case that was released that Jack Smith had put together. So basically what this was is after the immunity ruling from the Supreme Court that basically said that, Donald Trump can do whatever he wants as president. Didn't say that in that exact terms, but it gave the implication that he was immune on a lot of things if they were considered official acts. And so what he did is that he reshaped the whole case against him in the January 6th case and basically said, okay, here are the things that he did that were not considered official acts as presidents. This is more of him doing things that he was considered more of a candidate and not as president. So I'm going to read this article. But before I do, it looks like Dave H has joined the chat. Dave H has said, Trump 2024. I get this a lot in the comment section on pretty much every video that I put out there. It's just big Trump 2024. But Dave has more to say. Let's see what he has to say. Trump derangement syndrome in real time. That's another thing that they always say, the Trump derangement syndrome. And I think that was probably cool for them for maybe a year or a year and a half. But, you know, here we are 8 years later, and they're still saying Trump derangement syndrome. And I don't know. I think they think that it trolls liberals really well. I think it's stupid. It means absolutely nothing to me. I think it's corny, just like Dave. And Dave finally wraps up, unless he's got more to say. Simp little bitch who is so vain about being bald needs to wear a hat. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of losing my hair. It does suck. And I would say that a lot of the hair loss came from the New York Mets and probably a lot of my sports teams. My sports teams have caused me a lot of hair loss. But I will tell you that, you know, wearing the hat, yeah, I don't know. It just looks better on camera for me, but I don't really, you know, that doesn't really bother me. And no wars under Trump. Yeah, this is Dave who thinks that Trump's the big bad tough guy. Dave, let me ask you a question. When he was when he was 86 Mets beat my Red Sox. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But let me ask you something, Dave. Since Trump is your hero and he's a big bad tough guy, and he was out there talking about protecting the women, and the men in that audience was cheering, yay, Mr. Trump's going to protect my woman. Are you one of those, Dave? Are you one of those who cheers for Mr. Trump to protect your women in your life? My guess is that you probably are, and that you can't. Yeah, I'm not even really sure, you know, what your situation is, but anyway, I mean, again, these are the kind of things that I get in the comment sections constantly, and people are wondering why I don't respond to some of them. I will tell you, a lot of times I don't respond to them because this is what I get. I mean, this is like childish, dumb shit that makes no sense. It's the same Trump derangement syndrome. It's the simp little bitch. It's the cuck. It's the, you know, all this language that uneducated Donald Trump voters and sycophants get into. I will guarantee you that Dave, a couple things. I will guarantee you that Dave probably didn't graduate high school. I would also guarantee you that Dave probably didn't follow politics until he started reading memes on social media about Donald Trump, and he found out how racist he was. So that got Dave all excited. And now all of a sudden that he's a big political guy. But anyway, on to Jack Smith, who is now basically starting to recontrol this case. He is taken back over after what they deemed was Donald Trump being immune in a lot of these cases. So here's what just happened recently. Special counsel Jack Smith outlined in a motion unsealed by a judge on Wednesday what he called former President Trump's increasingly desperate efforts to subvert the 2020 presidential election results. Listen up, Dave, because you probably don't hear this stuff. Trump and his legal team had opposed the motion, arguing it would interfere with the November election results. The filing unveils new details in connection to the Republican presidential nominee January 6 case. Smith in the motion wrote that Trump's scheme was a private criminal effort. He emphasized throughout the document that the former president was acting in his capacity as candidate and not president. This is an apparent attempt by Smith to respond to the bombshell Supreme Court ruling earlier that this year that said that presidents have immunity for official acts. At its core, the defendant's scheme was a private one. He extensively used private actors and his campaign infrastructure to attempt to overturn the election results and operated in a private capacity as a candidate for office, Smith wrote. So there were a lot of things in this report that, if you haven't saw it, that basically just showed Donald Trump was more of a criminal than a lot of the people who really haven't followed the case thought. There was a few things in there where he was told about the safety of Mike Pence, and he was basically like, so what? Doesn't even really care about the safety of his vice president, because his vice president didn't go along with his sucker scheme, and he wasn't one of Donald Trump's flying monkeys who would just do whatever the boss told him. Mike Pence at least had the wherewithal enough to say, this is not right. There's absolutely nothing legal about what he's asking me to do. So this is absolutely something that I am not going to put my name on. If you could find another way, find another way. And that's what he did. He tried to find other ways. He would call governors. He would call anybody he could to try to get them to go along with his plan. He was calling people and telling them, just say the election was stolen and I'll handle it from there. There's so many different things that this guy has done over the years. And January 6th is one of the worst things that I've ever seen in this country. And I and others have compared it to 9/11. And if you think you're going to patriot shame me out of going, you're really going to compare 9/11 with January 6th, I am. And none of you are talking me out of it. That 100% is on the level of January or 9/11. And the reason why is because on 9/11, these were terrorists from other countries who came into this country and attacked. Now, yeah, I get it. There was more deaths on 9/11. I'm not going down this rabbit hole with you, but the similarities are, these were also terrorists, but these were terrorists from our own country, attacking our own country and being led by, at the time, the president of the United States, because he has an ego so fragile that he couldn't handle that he lost badly the 2020 election. So what he did is he knew he had a lot of uneducated morons who would buy into anything that he said. And that is clear because now a bunch of them are sitting in jail. And if he doesn't win this election, which he's not going to, I got bad news for you, Dan, and for anybody else that is screaming Trump 2024, prepare yourselves, because he's not winning in November. And when he doesn't win, he's going to be sitting in the same prisons that those morons who attacked the Capitol are sitting in right now. And you just saw the other day this Tina Peters who tried to go along with the scheme. And then she's crying in front of the judge, or she's being a smartass too, and thought she was going to Trumpian her way through this trial and deny and tell the judge that he knows that what I'm saying is true. And see, here's the problem for you idiots. We all don't live in your goofy bubble. We don't abide by your stupidity. So we go on with our lives and we look at things from an abject and from a logistical standpoint, whether we agree with it or we don't agree with it. So what we'll do is we'll take in on all of the information and logistically realize, is this true or is this not true? Unfortunately, Donald Trump has a lot of people out there who easily are duped into believing that whatever he says is true, or you just want to go along with it because there's something inside of you that is just so hateful and angry that you believe that if Donald Trump is president, all the hate and anger that you have inside of you is going to get to be able to be released upon whoever it is that you're angry and hateful towards. But I got bad news for you again. In November, Kamala Harris is going to whip the shit out of this dipshit clown. I promise you that's happening. You can keep a clip of this and come back at me in November. I'm just telling you right now, Kamala Harris is winning in November. That's happening. So prepare yourself, get your militia costumes, whatever it is that you want to do. But I also feel like a lot of the MAGA people are starting to run out of steam as well. I don't know if they have the same gusto as they did in 2016 and as they did in 2020. And I just think that they're looking around. Some of them are looking around and saying, "Yeah, I still love Mr. Trump, but I ain't going to jail. I'm not going through all that. It's clear that if he loses this election, that I would be screwed. And yeah, I'm not doing it. I'll yell all the way up till November, and I'll be as scary as I can all the way up until November. But when November hits and when he loses, you're definitely going to see some people that are still all in on this nonsense. But you're going to also see that there's going to be a significant amount of people who are like, yeah, I might scream a little bit on Twitter, but I'm not going to no Capitol. I'm not going to Washington, D.C. That ain't happening this time. I think I'm going to spend time with my family, which would be the wise thing to do. So, but anyway, that's the latest on what's happening with Jack Smith and the January 6th case. And we'll see where this goes. And I also want to point out one other thing. This is not an October surprise kind of thing. Donald Trump did everything he could to delay these trials. And you keep delaying them. And so once you keep delaying them, at some point, something has got to move on. And Jack Smith has now had to wait after the Supreme Court made their ruling about whether or not a president has full immunity when he's president and can do whatever it is that he wants to do. They made this ruling, and Jack Smith now had to redo his entire case. He did, and he brought it out. Whether you want to scream and cry if it's before the election, I don't really care. Neither do most people. If he did something illegal, and if he did what is said in that indictment, and again, this is public record. You could go on there and read it if you'd like to. But if it is true, which it is, there's no question about it, it's true, then he's guilty. He deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. And he is probably going to, unless somehow he gets on a jet and flees and goes to another country. But when he loses in November, he's going to jail, whether it's this year or sometime next year. But next year, all of it is going to be trial after trial after trial for Donald Trump. And this has nothing to do with Joe Biden. This has nothing to do with Kamala Harris. This has something to do with the fact that Donald Trump is one of the biggest pussies that you will ever see in your life. He's not a tough guy. There's nothing tough about him. He is a weasel. He is a lifelong con artist that some of you, unfortunately, have bought into. But the good news is there are more people who are smart enough to listen to this guy. And it is shocking to me that there are people, even on the level of maybe not smart, maybe not dumb, but sort of somewhere in the middle, can listen to this guy and go, this guy is awesome. Again, I think the only people that would do that at this point, they know that he's full of shit, maybe, and they can listen to him and privately think to themselves, boy, this guy is just crazy. He's nuts. But boy, do I love the racist stuff. And do I love the hatred and anger towards Haitian people and immigrants and other people that have, and transgender people and gay people that at the end of the day have absolutely zero effect on my life. But boy, I still love hating them. And it's fun for me. It really completes everything about me that, there's really a scared little boy inside this fake man. And so I need to compensate by showing this over the top anger because it looks manly amongst other people. I got bad news for you. It's not manly at all. It's very sad. It's pathetic. And again, I look forward to the time where Kamala Harris beats Donald Trump in November and we put an end to all this nonsense that we have had to deal with for over 8+ years. I have followed politics for 25+ years. I really have. And when you're following it, there's a sense of, intellect that goes along with following it. And I try to learn as much as I can. And I go over and over and I read stuff. No, I don't watch CNN and MSNBC. I'm sure that's another boring take. Well, I'm not. I'm sure. I know that's another boring take because I get it in the comment section all the time. MSNBC, CNN has probably been mentioned in the comments 1,000 times since we started this show. And again, I don't even really care to argue with them and let them know that that's not something that I watch. I find cable news to be terrible. Even though I don't compare CNN and MSNBC to Fox News and Newsmax, they're two totally different garbage, but types of garbage, I should say. But I hope at some point in my lifetime, even though I think it's going to be difficult because now the news overall has found their golden goose, and their golden goose is Donald Trump has turned politics now into political theater, professional wrestling type news. And that's how they make their money now. And they're going to throw in serious stories here and there. But for the most part, they're going to turn it into this big clown show. Like Neil Cavuto the other day, he's the only one during the day on Fox News that reported this Jack Smith story. And when he reported it as if he was shocked, like, oh, wow, Donald Trump committed crimes. I can't believe it. Despite the fact that there's been an impeachment hearing, despite the fact that there's been a January 6th committee, he knows that there's been crimes. But on the channel that he works, he's not allowed to say this. He just has to pretend like, oh my gosh, you guys listen to this. And I'm sure it was during, I don't know what time Neil Cavuto's on. He's probably on the lowest rated time during the day. So most Fox News viewers didn't see it. And even if they did see it, they'd probably throw things at their TV anyway and say Neil Cavuto is a rhino, or I don't know, whatever the fuck they say, like TDS and all that dumb shit that you guys sit there and listen to. Like I said, used to have intellectual conversations. Now I'm having conversations with this guy. What's his name? Dan or some shit. Dave. Dave, who uses terms like TDS and shit like that. What else does Dave have to say? He worked at Harvard for 10 years. What, as the janitor? I mean, and a janitor is not a terrible job, but saying you worked at Harvard for 10 years, that means nothing. Axios is the bastion of news. Ha ha ha. That's the other thing that they like to do, is any news source, if they don't like the source, then they just say, ha ha ha, look at your source. But when you ask Dave, where do you get your news? He's going to tell me he worked at Harvard for 10 years. Same media that said Trump was a Russian spy and the laptop was Russian disinformation. First of all, the media never said Trump was a Russian spy. Find me that story where he said that. Number two, the laptop was Russian disinformation. You have a hard time with Facts Pal. First of all, I didn't even discuss the Russian laptop and the Russia thing altogether, so I don't even know what you're talking about. Wow, what a sad man. One viewer. Are you talking to me? I guess, Dave. Yes, I am talking to you. Sometimes, well, I will tell you why I only have one viewer. And the reason why is because my Twitter account right now is locked. Because Elon Musk's Twitter is absolute garbage. And it wasn't even a great comment. I'll admit it. It wasn't even that funny, but there was somebody said something about Elon Musk and Elon Musk, going back to South Africa or something. And I said, or we could shoot him up in one of his rockets to an undisclosed planet or some shit like that. Like I said, it's not even that funny. I'll admit it. But I think it's because it said shoot him up. It read it and automatically locked my account. And this was 3 days ago. I appealed it, and it's still showing locked. So my account will not be unlocked until next Tuesday or next Wednesday. So most of the viewers, when I do get live viewers, they do come from Twitter, and my Twitter account is locked. So there's really not much I can do about that. So it is what it is. And again, a lot of this so we could do some more content, and then we could put it out on YouTube, and then hopefully viewers will catch it on YouTube. And then people like Dave or Dan or whatever his name is will comment his nonsensical garbage. And like a moron, I respond to almost every bit of it. So um, the next thing is that we've had a hurricane that blew through the southeast, and it blew through Florida, blew through Georgia, and really blew through North Carolina. In fact, when I was doing the show last week, literally the hurricane was on its way to where I live. Now, I am in an area in the state of Florida, luckily, where I'm not going to get it near as bad as the Panhandle did. I'm in the north central Florida part of Florida, and we got it. It wasn't great. We had about 40-mile-per-hour winds, which it doesn't sound all that bad, but when you're in the middle of it, it was coming through probably around 10 o'clock at night, and it was blowing. It sounded scary. It really did. So I can't even imagine what it feels like when you're in the Panhandle and through Georgia and especially North Carolina. Everything, and as awful as it was, my last show, you could see the light started flickering because it was coming. And literally about an hour later, my power just shut off for the night and did not come back on until 3 o'clock in the afternoon the next day, which I consider myself extremely lucky, because that's the worst of what happened. I had people that worked with, poor lady, her house, her power went out. Tree went right through her roof, right in the middle of the night as the power went out, and she's there with her dog, scared to death, doesn't know what to do. So the only thing she could do is just try to sleep on her couch and hope that another tree doesn't fall through her house. So it was horrible and devastating. And generally, when a hurricane comes through, people have sympathy no matter who you are and what you are. In fact, in the state of Florida, it came through the Panhandle. And if anybody knows anything about the state of Florida, the Panhandle is basically Alabama. I mean, it is Trump country, the whole Panhandle. But it still breaks my heart that going through there, if anybody losing their house and, losing their lives, losing their pets, losing their just everything that they own, and now they are to this day either without power, or they have nowhere to go, or they're stuck in hotels and don't know what to do. It's just an awful, awful thing. But right now we have an awful, awful man going around and spreading some of the worst disinformation that the flying monkeys are going around and spreading. How do I know this? Because I've got flying monkeys in my life who are trying to spread this information to me, as if, first of all, they're getting me on something. I would hope that at this point they would know I'm intelligent enough to not read what they're sending me and go, holy shit, maybe I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris, and Joe Biden is worse than I thought, because North Carolina has no money, because Kamala Harris and Joe Biden gave it all to migrants so they can set up their homes here. If you are truly stupid enough to believe that, you're not going to do it. I know you won't, but I'm just asking. Maybe just stay out of politics altogether. Just do not get yourself involved in politics. I would just strongly advise you to stay away from not even politics, just even news, anything that resembles news or politics. Just stay away from it and reevaluate your entire existence. If you are stupid enough to believe that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are sitting around and saying, well, what are you going to do about these people in North Carolina? What can we do? We gave all the money to the migrants. I guess they're on their own. I can't stress this enough. If you're stupid enough to believe that, I'm begging you, just do not involve yourself in politics. Don't vote. I know people usually yell, go out and vote. I don't care who you vote for. Don't go, just go out and vote. I do care who you vote for if that is what you're making your vote on. If you are voting because you are not smart enough to not believe this nonsense, then you shouldn't be voting. Maybe it's a difference of opinion for me on this one. I don't think you should be voting if you're that gullible to believe that. But anyway, let's play this clip real quick. This is Donald Trump flat lying. And again, how could you look at a dude and go, okay, I've got to vote for somebody for the leader of the free world? This is about as serious of a vote that I can make in my life. And I've got to vote for somebody who I think best fits the morals and the character of this country. But you have a guy who could lie so blatantly to your face, even though it is incredibly easy to disprove exactly what you're saying. This clip is going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Donald Trump tried to pretend like Joe Biden didn't even bother calling the governor of Georgia, and the governor of Georgia had something different to say.
Need some help from the federal government. They have to get together, ideally with the governor. That governor needs to, he's been trying to get them, and I'm sure they're going to come through. But he's been calling the president, hasn't been able to get him.
I just spoke, the president just called me yesterday afternoon. I missed him and called him right back. And he just said, hey, what do you need? And I told him, we got what we need. We'll work through the federal process. He offered that if there's other things we need, just to call him directly, which I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, it is completely different, the two different things that were said. One was said he didn't even call him, and then you had the governor himself come up and say, not only did he not call me, he asked me, what do I need? He was great, all this stuff. How you can respect anybody that is trying to win an election by literally and blatantly lying to you. And they're lying to you not in the old sense of, I'm going to get you this, I'm going to get you that. It is lying in a manner that is so dangerous to get people to believe that you have the current leader who literally just does not care about a hurricane blowing through a town, that you're that desperate to try to get people to believe that. Now, his problem is that the morons that he's talking to and the morons who choose to believe this, and yeah, I'm using the strong language like idiots and morons because you are an idiot and a moron if you choose to believe this, especially after you just saw the governor just say that is, he didn't say verbatim, that's not true, but he just said, not only did I hear from the president, heard from him yesterday, asked me, what do I need? Give me, I'll give you anything you want. But he's that desperate to make up lies so grand because he's so scared about losing this election, which again tells me there's nothing manly about this guy. He's a scared little pussy who can't handle losing this election. But the main reason why he can't handle losing this election is because he knows what's going to happen to him when he does lose the election. When he does lose the election, he knows he's going to prison for the rest of his life, and deservedly so. And I cannot wait to see it. I can't wait to see him go to prison. But anyway, if you could vote for that guy, if you could look at yourself in the mirror, and I also said this too, if you have wife, kids, daughters, mothers, sisters, nieces, if you have any women in your life and you can vote for this guy, and where he basically says, hey, if you live in a state and they say you have to have rape babies, you have to have rape babies, and that I promise you I'm not going to promise you, but there's a decent chance that here in the state of Florida that could happen, depending on how the election plays out with the Senate here. But it's, forget about Florida. It's already happening in some states. And if Donald Trump wins and they are able to enact this entire Project 2025, it's going to happen in more states. Some states that are not enacting the law for abortion, unless it is because of rape or incest or the life of the mother, they may change those laws based on who wins the presidency. So they may not have them now, but it is very likely that some of these states absolutely will change. But I don't understand how you can listen to a man who blatantly lies to your face to try to sucker you into voting for him because he's scared. And if you have any women in your life, especially wife, daughter, girlfriend, anything like that, it boggles my nieces, anything. It boggles my mind that you could vote for this guy who they've already made it clear that they will do this. But if you want to hear our future president and her response to the hurricane, this is really more how it's done.
24 hours, I have spoken with Governor Kemp of Georgia, Governor Cooper of North Carolina, and many local officials. I have shared with them that we will do everything in our power to help communities respond and recover. And I've shared with them that I plan to be on the ground as soon as possible, but as soon as possible without disrupting any emergency response operations, because that must be the highest priority in the first order of business.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's how it's supposed to be done. I mean, you take this seriously, and when you're talking about the victims, or when you're talking about the hurricanes, you're talking about the victims. You're not talking about yourself. You're not making this a political thing. You're not trying to win the election by doing this. You're being a statesperson. You're showing how it doesn't matter who you voted for in this particular instance. It is how you handle these situations. And this is exactly why Donald Trump lost in 2020, because he handled COVID so incredibly poorly that even people who would have voted for him, this was the start of the people who were like, man, I was going to vote for this guy, but he's basically telling me that my dad's in the hospital. Oh, well, that's what you get. They're old people. What can you do? And he didn't say that specifically, but there were plenty of people who were around him who basically said that. There were some people who literally said, you know what? Just sometimes you get old and you die. That's just what happens. That's the reality of things. And that was the whole mentality of the Trump administration for COVID. And it was more about money than it was about lives. And unfortunately for Donald Trump, some people, and a lot of people who cared more about the lives part, were the people who were going to vote for you. And you just told them, I don't care about you. I care more about the economy, because if the economy is bad, then I'm going to have a hard time winning this election. But what he didn't realize is at that particular time, because in general elections, it is mostly about the economy. And if the economy is bad during an election time, then it's harder for you to win. Incumbent presidents, it is easier for them to win, but if there's one way you're going to lose, it's if the economy is bad. And because COVID, the economy started to turn and it started to become worse and worse. People were losing jobs. The GDP was going down. There was all kinds of things that was happening during the economy that was not good. So he thought that, okay, we're going to focus more on this, then we're going to focus on the deaths. But if there's anything that people are going to take more seriously than the economy, it is their loved ones dying. And he wasn't smart enough to understand that. So what he did is he listened to these morons around him, and he took it like the Steve Bannons of the world, who said, Mr. Trump, you need to go out there and you just need to tell them that the Democrats are shutting down all these businesses. Well, first of all, that just wasn't true. First of all, major companies, major corporations closed down on their own. And the reason why they closed down on their own is because they didn't want, well, part of it was, and whether you look at this as a good thing or a bad thing, They didn't want it because if their employees came in and caught COVID because you forced your employees to come in, then there's lawsuits that there's going to be pursued all over the place. And corporations, at the end of the day, still love their money. And when they shut down, that was a money thing. There's absolutely no question about it. Surely there were some people who shut down because they cared about their employees. But if you look at major corporations, they care more about their money and their corporations than they do the employees. I'm not saying that they don't care about their employees at all. I'm sure that there was part of that was like, you know what, we have employees too. And, we care about our employees and we don't want them dying. I mean, you had every sports league shut down. Government didn't make them do that. Las Vegas, my favorite place in the world, shut down. Joe Biden didn't, or the government, the federal government did not make them do that. Disney World here in Florida, a lot of companies here in the state of Florida shut down. Federal government didn't make them do that. So, the way Donald Trump handled COVID was so poor. That's probably why he lost the election. Had he handled it well, or had COVID never existed, there's possibility he would have won again. Who knows? But I think because he handled it so poorly, and again, he's handling this so poorly that he's not gaining voters. He's retaining some of the nut jobs that are already going to vote for him. And based on the fact that migrants are eating pets, which isn't true, based on the fact that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris stole all of the money from FEMA and gave it to migrants. Those people you already got. You got to add voters. You lost the last election. So in order to win the next election, you have to add voters. And this is not the way to do it. And this is why he's going to lose. But CNN did a good job. And I know you can't bring up CNN. Again, I don't watch CNN. I don't watch any cable news. But I'm not saying that on cable news that they don't report anything that isn't factual. I'm just saying now cable news has turned into a clown show. I mean, it's just turned into a big, how do we get money? How do we get more money? And what kind of stories can we tell to do that? Instead of being just straight news that is just nothing but straight news. And now it's all opinionated. It's all this stuff. And I find this garbage. But this is an actual fact check by CNN about comments that Donald Trump and others in the Republican Party has made in regards to this hurricane, which is absolute garbage. And here were the results of that fact check.
Moment to fact check a claim that is spreading far and wide about FEMA disaster funding. Let's first listen to what we're hearing from former President Donald Trump.
They stole the FEMA money just like they stole it from a bank so they could give it to their illegal immigrants that they want to have vote for them this season.
And Republican Congressman Mike Waltz said on this show yesterday about people struggling with Helene's aftermath. This is what he said.
They're hearing from the DHS secretary they're out of money to help them, but they still have money to help people who have come to this country illegally. I think that's wrong on the face of it.
I want to go through the facts here. One, it is illegal for undocumented immigrants to vote in presidential elections. Two, Congress appropriates funds with intent for specific purposes. The money allocated to DHS for helping states to house migrants is separate, completely separate from the money for disasters. No money is being stolen from disaster relief. Three, FEMA says it has enough money for disaster relief for Helene, posting this fact check to its website. In fact, before the show, just to make sure I had all the facts right, did some digging. I spoke to a DHS official. That official says as of this morning, $45 million from FEMA that has already been used for Helene disaster relief. The concern is if people hear that money is going elsewhere, they may not even apply for relief. The official says people should know there is money available now to help.
That really, what she said there at the end, is probably the most dangerous thing, that when they're out there saying that FEMA is out of money and that it's all been given to migrants and everything. Now you have people who may be duped enough into believing that. And when they hear it, they're like, well, I guess we can't even apply for any money from FEMA because it's all gone, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris gave it all to the migrants. And again, I will stress a million times that if you are willing to vote for somebody this weak and this pathetic to blatantly lie to your face about things that 100% are not happening and can be easily disproved, I strongly suggest that you reevaluate forget about how you vote, how you reevaluate how you go through life and how you take things in and how you allow yourself to be so easily manipulated into these ridiculous things that you are getting yourself so angry over that are just not true. Why would you want to anger yourself over things that are not true? Believe me, if this were true, I'd be angry with you. I'd be on your side and I'd be like, oh, boy, we got to get rid of these two assholes. Are you kidding me? They're legitimately taking the money from FEMA and they're giving it to migrants so they can put them up in housing. I mean, I'm with you. I'm voting for Donald Trump now if this really is the case. But it's not the case. It's easily disproven. It's not even this isn't even something that takes a lot of research. It takes one simple first forget about Google. It takes logic in your brain. If you can hear that and it automatically sticks in your brain to that being true, then you've got problems. Without questioning it for 1 second, then you've got some issues. So then that's when I would suggest that you make that reevaluations and say, do I have the issues that Brian said on the Black and White show? I do. Okay, then I'm going to reevaluate and just take a step back and maybe try to, when I investigate things or if I hear things, I'm going to investigate it properly. I'm just not going to believe everything I hear. Just so you know, I don't believe everything I hear, even if it's something that I like and I think is something positive for the Democrats or whoever it is that I'm voting for. I will fact check everything, because if I'm coming on a show where I get tons of different comments, I want to be able to back up what I say on this show, and I want to be able to respond properly to anybody that would come onto the comment section with at least a modicum of interest in having a real debate rather than the TDS and the cuck and all whatever the fuck they say. So I don't know. That's how I go about things. Maybe something that you may want to consider if you are allowing yourself to become angry over things that just are simply not true. Okay, so we had a debate recently between the vice presidents, the vice presidential candidates, Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. Now, I'm not going to get too much into it because, first of all, it happened last week. Wait, what day was it? Yeah, no, it happened this week. Yeah, it happened geez, I don't know. The days are going by so crazy. And like I said, with my Mets, I got a lot going on with the Mets, and they are consuming a lot of my time and a lot of my thought. And I got to tell you, it is very, very, it's cathartic. It's good that I am allowing this to replace some of the political crap that is going on in our country. But we did have a debate. And again, there wasn't. So here's the whole take on the debate. You had most people would come out and say that it was a tie. And that it was more cordial than the debates that we have been hearing over the years, which to some extent was refreshing. To some people was a little frustrating because some people thought that maybe Tim Walz was too nice to J.D. Vance. A couple things there. That's just who Tim Walz is. I think Tim Walz wanted to show that he is a guy who is genuine and wants to have real discussion and real debate. And his approach to doing that is to not try to insult, but to make his point and allow a counterpoint, take in the counterpoint and soften it a little bit and continue with his point. And, that's effective, I think, in a lot of ways. I think where people didn't like it too much is because what JD Vance says and who he is and how he's been saying things and what he has been saying is very dangerous stuff. And to sort of be schmaltzy about it and okay, hey JD, I get what you're saying. And the people are kind of like, no, we don't get what you're saying, buddy. You need to be called out very, very toughly for a lot of the things that you're saying. But at the end of the day, as I say a million times, this debate, like I said, I told people that night, some people were sending me texts. I said, here's the thing, regardless of who you think won, how well you think Vance did, how well you think Tim Walz did, how bad you think they did, people are going to forget about this debate by lunchtime the next day, which pretty much they already have. I forgot that it was even this week. I really did. But what it did was, for some people, it humanized JD Vance and the perception of who they thought JD Vance was. But here's the reality of it. JD Vance still is that awful, terrible person who means everything that he has said. He means that he wants a federal ban on abortion. He means that childless cat ladies are losers. He means people who don't have children are psychotic. These are the kind of things that he did during the debate to soften his image a little bit. But all he was a charming liar during the whole time. And, what's his name? The serial killers, they're charming liars. So basically, JD Vance had serial killer vibes, Ted Bundy kind of vibes, that he was charming. He's able to lie to you and you get people to go, hey, he's not as bad as I thought. But trust me, he is as bad as you thought. But there was one moment during the debate that was the most talked about and probably the most important part of the debate. And this is when Tim Walz called out JD Vance to his face about
he is still
20th,
saying
or January
he
6th.
didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Or the election.
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of...
I don't even know what he's talking about there. What specifically did Kamala Harris do to censor people's speech about COVID? Did anybody explain that? Does anybody know what that is? If you do, let me know. I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about. And when I say this, I want people to be specific. What speech was censored where Kamala Harris came in and said, you cannot say this? Please tell me what he's talking about.
Of the 2020 COVID situation.
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further.
First of all, you're not happy to talk about it further. And this idea that there were problems in the 2020 election is untrue. It is not true. Not one bit of it has been proven. You could talk to the MAGA Bubbleverse and they will tell you that there absolutely has been proven. You're just not, what are you watching? CNN, MSNBC, and you're just letting them tell you what to think. I am letting the courts of the United States tell me what to think. And unless anybody could show me one court case, because I've looked through, as many as I could, I've read as much as I could about this. There's not one court case that even gave a hint that there was something nefarious about that election to where we need to look back and go, hold on a second now. This thing might have been stolen from Donald Trump. I mean, there's literally nothing. But JD Vance is going to stand there in front of the American people and tell them we still have questions. And this is part of JD Vance knowing that there is absolutely nothing that he can go on, but he knows the boss is watching. So he has to suck up to the boss, and he has to continue this ruse that there were legitimate issues in the 2020 election. And again, we all know that this is not true. But last thing on the debate, not necessarily the clip from the debate, but they interviewed this young man, Marcus. MSNBC had a bunch of, I think it was like high school kids, and they asked Marcus about the debate. And this young man had one of the best answers I've heard anybody say about this debate.
And Marcus, about this constant criticism about the vice president not being able, about the vice president being in office for these last, he's already upset about it. The vice president being in office for all these years and not being able to make the change was the allegation from J.D. Vance. You said to me, I've been to high school civics class. Why did you say that?
Because if anybody took high school civics class, they'd know what the vice president can do and what the vice president can do.
We were talking, Marcus, about this constant criticism.
I'm going to get back to his clip here. This young man already sounds like he sounds like he could be a pundit already on one of these shows, but he does a really good job answering.
The vice president being in office for all these years and not being able to make the change was the allegation from J.D. Vance. You said to me, I've been to high school civics class. Why did you say that?
Because if anybody took high school civics class, they'd know what the vice president can do and what the vice president can do. I want to make a quick point. Neither candidate on that stage talked about what executive action they're going to take on day one to do what they want, nor were they asked, because they know that they can't. That's not how the vice presidency works. You don't get to do what you want. You do what the president delegates you to do.
Yeah, that's one of the strongest points that anybody's made. They're like, they keep talking about Vice President Harris and why hasn't she done this and why hasn't she done that? Then if the vice president can do all the stuff that they're saying that she can do, then why do they not question the vice presidential candidates in the debate? What is it that you're going to do on day one? In fact, you can't find a vice presidential debate where they've ever asked the vice presidential candidate. And I'm saying this, not going back and watching all the vice presidential. But if anybody wants to go back and watch them and try to prove me wrong, be my guest, because they don't ask vice presidents, what will you do on day one? Because they can't set policy. It's not up to the vice president. The vice president is there to break ties in the Senate, which Vice President Harris has done more than any vice president in the history of this country. They're also there to go and do some international work and do some other delegated things that the president asked them to do. And they're also there to serve in case something happens to the president. That is their main role. I mean, a vice president is almost like being a kicker on a team. You just sit there until it's time for you to kick. Other than that, your role, you're not on the offense, you're not on the defense, you are there just to go into the game when it's time to kick. That's basically what a vice president does. It's really not a tough job, to be honest with you. That's why so many people want the job, because it's not that hard. It's like, hey, I'm just going to hang out, and if anything happens to this person, then I'm stepping in and I'm going to, on the job, learn how to do things just in case I need to step in. And I'll break a couple ties here and there in the Senate. But other than that, that's all I do. So this idea that Kamala Harris, what if she's going to do it now? Why didn't she do it in the 3.5 years? Again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. This kind of nonsense is to dupe the people who are already duped enough to vote for you. They are already on your side. So to continue to press these people over and over and over again, I'm not even sure why you don't change course a little bit, because you've already got them. Donald Trump has proven in rally after rally after rally that he can pretty much say whatever he wants, and the people cheer. Yay, yay, Mr. Trump, you're going to protect my wife and my daughter. Yay, thank you, Mr. Trump. I feel so protected now that you're going to protect my wife and my daughter. I mean, Jesus Christ, when I heard that, I was like, what kind of dude? I went to see Lionel Richie in concert. And I love Lionel Richie, but he came out about an hour late. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm already pissed off. I'm like, Lionel, what are we doing? What is going on? I'm sitting there with my date, and finally comes out. Kind of half pissed already, but I'm like, all right, he's out. And now he's singing the hits. Now I'm in. I'm like, oh, this is great. Lionel's doing his thing. I'm back in. And then Lionel gets up and he's like, all right, guys, I'm here. I'm going to help warm up your women for you. I'm like, Lionel, hold on. I appreciate it, but I'll take care of that myself. I don't need you. Just sing the songs. And I'm not the, shut up and sing kind of guy. But when you're telling me that you're here to warm up my woman for me, I'll take care of that. I don't need that from you. But that's the vibe that I got from the people in the Trump audience when he says, women, I'm going to take care of you. Maybe there were some guys in the Lionel Richie audience that are like, oh my God, thank God that he's going to help me out with her, because I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to pull it off. But that's what the kind of sense that I got with old Donnie Trump and the people in his audience cheering that he was going to take care of his ladies for him. But anyway, speaking, there are a couple of Trump clips that I would like to play here that he has said over the last few days. He's doing this thing now where he is calling Kamala Harris stupid, and that she has, mental issues. In fact, let's just play the clip. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way.
He was originally talking about Joe Biden.
She was born that way. And if you think about it, only a mentally disabled person could have allowed this to happen to our country. Anybody would know this.
The funniest part about this is, I think there was times where we would listen to it. I should say I would listen to this and be like, this motherfucker, you're just so angry about the things that he says and how he says it. And now it's just more of Kamala Harris in that last debate broke his brain so badly that he is really struggling with how awful he did, and how everybody, for the most part, unless you're in the MAGA bubble, how everybody is saying that was an ass beating of epic proportions, some calling it the greatest debate performance of all time. And that broke his small little brain so badly that now every time he goes out into these rallies, it's kind of, what she did to him during that debate. She would say things like, go to his rallies, they're boring, people are leaving. And instead of sticking on topic, that drove him so insanely crazy that that's all he focused on now, on the answer. So the same thing is happening during these rallies. He can only focus on the fact that he got beaten so badly in this debate that it's going to be, Kamala is stupid. Kamala was born with mental deficiencies, and this is going to be him up until election. But the problem is, this is going to get him no new voters. These are just going to get the people. You could even hear the people in the crowd. You hear cheering in the background, but just didn't have the same gusto that the old rallies did. It just didn't sound like the people were into it as much. In fact, this next clip, he's calling her stupid again, and the crowd, for some bizarre reason, at the end starts chanting, lock her up, lock her up. But listen to the lock her up chant. Again, it's not the same old 2016 MAGA crowd that I'm hearing in 2024. They just didn't sound that into it.
This is what we're bringing. But we're bringing them in at levels that nobody's ever seen, and we're doing it by stupid people like Kamala. She's a stupid person.
Again, too, the doing it at levels like nobody's ever seen. He says this about everything. Don't you seriously? Well, look at the MAGA people in the background. They are bored. And Kamala Harris is exactly right. They get up and they leave out of boredom because they're like, oh no, another thing that I've never seen before, which is something I've seen a billion times. I don't even know what he's talking about here, but anyway, he's already talked about how stupid she is. And the lock her up chant, the bizarre, nonsensical lock her up chant is coming up. And again, just listen, it doesn't have the same power.
Stupid person. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, that was pretty weak. I mean, they're not even out of their chairs. You saw one guy try to stand up and get them all into it, and they're like, lock her up. And they were out of sync with the lock her up. I mean, back in the 2016 MAGA days, I mean, they were on it. I mean, lock her up. They were cheering. Fists were in the air. Faces all red. Just kind of a mosh pit, it felt like inside there. That place felt angry. That felt like WWE Raw, taping back in the day when The Rock and Stone Cold were there and everybody's on fire. This one, there's kind of like, lock her up. Okay, yeah, let's screw it. Let's do the lock her up thing, I guess. But this is him also, too, calling for one day of violence. And what he's referring to is that he's brought this up before, is that when you go into a store in California, that if somebody steals something up to $900, it is considered a misdemeanor. That anything over $900 is no longer a misdemeanor. But he is alluding to the fact that Californians just allow people to go into these stores and just to steal stuff up to $900 and just to let it go. That, again, is not the case. All it is that you can steal up to $900 worth of stuff and you'll be charged with a misdemeanor and not a felony. In fact, got an interesting little statistic about a couple of other states that have these same laws in their states. But let's listen to Donald Trump talk to the crowd about what could happen on these days that would wipe all of this out.
950 is a misnomer because you can steal whatever you want. You can go way above. But you'd see, originally you saw kids walk in with calculators. They were calculating. They didn't want to go over the $950. They're standing with calculators, adding it up. These are smart people. They're not so stupid, but they have to be taught. Now, if you had one really violent day, like a guy like Mike Kelly, put him in charge. Congressman Kelly, put him in charge for one day. Mike, would you say, he's right here, he's a great congressman. Would you say, Mike, that if you were in charge, you would say, oh, please, don't touch them, let them rob your store. All these stores go out of business, right? They don't pay rent, the city doesn't have, it's a chain of events. It's so bad. One rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out, and it will end immediately. End immediately. It'll end immediately.
Yeah, well, so Mike Kelly that's there in the audience, or Max Kelly, whatever his name was, he's one of the congressmen there. What he probably knows and what Donald Trump did not know is that in the state that he was doing that rally in Pennsylvania, it's up to $2,000 where it becomes a misdemeanor, where in California, it's $900. So the rules and the law in California is actually more strict than it is in Pennsylvania. And the congressperson that he's pointing at, also in the state of Texas, big bad Texas, where they don't put up with shit there, and the law is the law. And if you break the law, we're coming to get you. It's $2,500 in Texas. So it's actually more in Pennsylvania, and it's more in Texas for the misdemeanor to no longer be a misdemeanor than it is in California. So, again, this is kind of important stuff that you should know before before you go around and spread this nonsense and listen to a lifelong grifter liar who has always lied to every single person that he's ever come in contact with, but still believing them is insane. But here's one thing you absolutely can believe Donald Trump saying. This is what he had to say when he had to pay overtime to people in his crowd who probably need overtime.
Don't give. I know a lot about overtime. I hated to give overtime. I hated it. I'd get other people. I shouldn't say this, but I'd get other people in. I wouldn't pay. I hated.
Look at the
This
crowd
is
in the
going to
back.
lead to a lot.
I mean, he's telling them to their face, I don't like paying overtime. And guess what? Project 2025 doesn't like paying overtime either. There are stipulations in Project 2025 to get rid of overtime, to get rid of extra pay for the worker. This whole administration is trying to set up for the owners and not for the workers. And the fact that the workers who would vote for this guy, who do not take the time to realize this, is so mind-blowingly insane to me. I will never understand it. People always say, I brought this up before, the MSNBC and CNN, where are you getting your news? You're just saying it because you hate Trump. They have a document that they laid out. It's 900 pages long. You can read it yourself if you want to. You're not going to, but you can read it yourself and see that everything in this document that they want to lay out for the next administration, which in this case obviously is Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump's name is mentioned over 300 times in Project 2025. Over 300 times, Donald Trump's name has been mentioned in Project 2025. So, if you do really care, at least skim through it, maybe read a chapter or two, go through the index and look at the chapters and see which ones would spark your interest the most, and maybe start reading it and get a sense of what Project 2025 is and what it will do and what it wants to do. And maybe you can educate yourself a little bit more than just listening to this clown who continues to lie over and over and over again to your face in these rallies, outside of him saying, I don't like paying overtime. And in fact, neither do my owner friends. And if I have my way, we're not going to pay overtime either. And what else I'm going to do is I'm going to put tariffs on everything across the board coming into this country. And it's going to raise your taxes. It's going to raise the price of goods here, and the inflation is going to go up. I know that you're going to believe me instead of the economic experts that are telling you this, because I'm just going to say that the economic experts are rhinos, or they're from CNN or MSNBC. And I've got this locked in already. I've got you people programmed to believe that if I could just tell you that the source of this is from something that I've already programmed you into not believing, then I got you, But again, I've said before, you need more voters. You need new voters. And how you're going to get new voters by telling them you don't like paying overtime, best of luck, pal. And I've told you before, I will say this, I feel more and more confident. Kamala Harris is going to win this election. She's going to win big. There's not going to be a next day, 2 days, a week later kind of thing to figure out who won. We'll probably know by no later than 11 o'clock p.m. that night. So I feel pretty confident in that up to this point. If something changes from now until November 5th, then maybe I'll reassess. But as of right now, I believe she's going to win. I think she's going to win big. Finally, Lana and I, unfortunately, Lana's not with me tonight, but we're going to do a contest before the election, or probably the election night. We started last week our MAGA loser of the week. And each week I'm going to find the biggest loser from the MAGAverse that I can find. And I've said before, this is difficult. It's not very easy because there's a lot of MAGA losers online that you can find. And to pick out the MAGA loser of the week is really difficult. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take the MAGA losers of the week, and on election night, we're going to play the clips of all the MAGA losers of the week leading up to that night and pick the MAGA loser of the year. So that's going to be really difficult. So if it's hard enough to pick the weekly one, imagine how hard it's going to be to pick the MAGA loser of the year. So tune in for that on election night. That is something that we are going to name. But this MAGA loser of the week is a gentleman who spent, I believe, $4,000 on a guitar that was supposedly signed by Taylor Swift. And from what I read, if anybody can verify, I wasn't able to verify or not verify this, but it turns out that she actually did not sign this guitar, but let's say she did. Either way, this guy bought this guitar, this signed or supposedly signed guitar by Taylor Swift, so he could do this with it. $4,000.
Leave the wall hanger. Gary, now take that, hang up that busted thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what kind of loser you have to be. Generally when I play these clips, there's people in the background who could also contend for losers of the week, but they're not the main focus or the main source. So the people cheering this in the background are all losers as well. So when you put those losers in cheering on the MAGA loser of the week, it makes for the perfect winner of this particular contest. So that is our MAGA loser of the week. I wish I knew his name. I wish I knew his address, because we'd like to send him some award that commemorates his big win as the MAGA loser of the week. He bought a guitar that was signed or supposedly signed by Taylor Swift for $4,000 so he can walk up on stage, smash it with a hammer, and then walk off stage with it. So I don't know. I think there's a way better way. And by the way, he spent $4,000 on it. These are the same people complaining about the prices of eggs and milk. But he's got $4,000 to spend on a guitar so he could smash it with a hammer. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our MAGA loser of the week. That also, too, will conclude this week's episode of Black and White with Brian Rundle and Lana Quest. You can join us live Tuesday night. Unfortunately, because my account is locked through Twitter, I'm not going to be able to broadcast again on Twitter, so it is going to lose a lot of live viewers at the time, but what can you do? Hopefully my appeal goes through and they lift the ban. I'm banned from Twitter. This is from the fucking guy who says he's free speech guy, and he's banning people for comments that completely taken out of context. And when I say this, if you didn't hear me say it earlier, it was not even that funny what I put. It wasn't even that great. I'll admit it. But somebody said something about Elon Musk leaving, and I said, yeah, or we could shoot him up in one of his rockets to an undisclosed planet. And I think the whatever read shoot him up, meaning I was talking about him or physically shooting somebody, and that's what got me banned. And obviously I did not mean it that way. I would never say anything as goofy and stupid as that, but that's why I'm banned from Twitter for right now until Wednesday. Our show is maybe our show isn't on Tuesday, because I believe the Mets play Tuesday night. So I have no idea when our show is going to be next week, because the New York Mets are going to rule everything for me from this point on. I had a company event tomorrow. I am not going to the company event because the Mets start at 4:00 and game one of their playoffs. So if anything, if you hate my political views, but you love baseball and you don't hate the Mets, can you do me a favor and at least let's come together there. Let's have a come together moment where we go, okay, I hate this guy and I hate his politics, but I love his passion for baseball. I love his passion for his New York Mets. I like the Mets. I don't hate the Mets. I'm going to help him pull it through. If you could do that for me, I truly would appreciate it. And maybe we could find some common ground there. But anyway, thank you guys for watching this week. We will be back Tuesday night. Oh, no, I don't know. I don't know when we'll be back. Just hit the notification bell, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you'll find out when we are next week. I will be on again next week. Lana will be on with me, I hope, if she can fit it in, when I tell her about my goofy schedule. So we'll figure out something. Hope you join us, and we'll see you soon.